Good frosty morning. Look at the leaves coming down out of the trees this morning. Get that one good frost and that's it. They're done. They're going to end up on the ground. So this morning what I'm doing, guys, is I'm taking the new camera, the ZV-E1, and we've got it mounted on our Kowa scope. And I just want to see what kind of footage we can get with the full frame sensor, especially in low light. So I did some low light tests this morning, but I just want to see, how does the 4K look on this camera through the scope. Now, what I did forget was we have no autofocus, which is, we lose all of the features then that I was hoping to use it for, which is bird eye auto detection, things like that. But we can still do, manual focus 4K, 60 and 120 frames. So we could get some slow motion for wildlife, but it's going to be all manual focus. So probably not the best use of that camera on this scope. If we mount that camera on my 600mm Tamron lens and throw a 2x teleconverter on there, we would retain autofocus and all the new features of that camera. So that's probably a better fit, but I wanted to try it on the scope anyway. So let's just look at some footage that we get on the scope. I'm just going to run a bit of a test with the new ZV-E1 Sony camera, which does super great. This is pre-dawn, low light. Of course, you guys are seeing the phone's making it look much brighter than it looks to my eye. But let's just go over to the camera and see what we're picking up with that new low light monster. It's so dark in here, I actually can't see the buttons on my camera to make the changes I want to make. So I've changed the camera to record in 4K 30, which requires 60 frames, and we had to go up to ISO 100,000. Now we're zoomed all the way in with the scope 60 times, and you can see if we come out, the screen will get brighter at 25 times. So that was worst case scenario. When we're zoomed all the way in like that, that's the darkest that it's going to be. So it is possible to film with this camera in pre-dawn light. For the past week, I've been running the new Sony ZV-E1 with either this cheap APS-C mount 24mm lens or my Tamron 17-28 lens, which is a full frame lens. Now this thing here is beautiful because it's light and small, and if we put the camera into dynamic active stabilization, it crops in and we can use APS-C lenses. The problem is that when you move the camera around, you do see some black vignetting. And the second problem is that we're close to my face like this by the time we zoom in to get rid of that black vignetting. So, I was looking for a solution that would give us a wide angle, lightweight option. And right away, everyone online was recommending the Sony 11mm APS-C lens. And I love, if we can get a Sony lens, that's what we're going to do. However, it's $700 plus tax, and I could not find a used one. So there is an alternative, and you guys know Gary. That's what we ended up going with. Here's the alternative. Samyang, also sold under the Rokinon brand here in Canada, makes a 12mm f2 APS-C lens. Now, I did a lot of research on this, and guys were saying it's not as sharp as the Sony, it's not as fast, blah, blah, blah. We're going to use this for video, not for photography, because I already have the wonderful 17-28 full-frame Tamron lens for wide-angle photography, so we just want a video lens, and I think this thing right here is going to do a good enough job. I managed to get this as a new return to Amazon for $360. Brand new lens, half price of what I would have paid for the Sony, so you guys know I'm cheap. And I do own, I have to say, I own and love, you guys know the last two lenses I bought were the Samyang 24 and Samyang 35. And before that, we also bought the Samyang 75mm. They are fantastic lenses. So I don't think that there's going to be much issue with the autofocus, etc. Let's get it on the new camera and just film with it a little bit and see what it looks like. Well, bummer. So I put the lens on the ZV-E1 over there and it froze the camera. So I then went and got my A6600, which we've got right here, put the lens on this camera and it did the exact same thing. There's something wrong with the autofocus or the contacts or something. The lens is like shorting out the cameras, and the only way that I can resolve it now is to pop the battery out of the camera. I can push any of the buttons, I can turn it off. It is actually in the off position right now. You can see the switch right there is off, and yet the camera is still on. This is what happens when you put it on the ZV-E1. As you can see, there's no cap on there, but it doesn't show anything on the screen. It's just black. Oh, okay, fine. Make a liar of me. Make a liar of me. Now it's making some kind of contact, but it's still on manual focus. See in the top left there, MF, and it's not set to manual focus, so something is definitely wrong with it. I'll just show you guys the difference here. There's the difference in size. This one here is 4 ounces, 115 grams, something like that. This one here is 7.5 ounces, so basically half a pound. It's a little heavier, but should give us a much wider field of view. Now this one also has a 62mm filter mount right there. And I have ordered a neutral density filter that we can put on there for filming in bright sunlight. So it's nice and small to fit on this lens. Well, don't you guys worry about it. This one's going to be returned. I've ordered a new one. I would have broke down and just did the Sony, except I ordered that ND filter that was almost $100 for this lens as well, and it won't fit on the Sony lens. So I'm like, you know what? I can't justify spending double on the Sony version of this lens, not having even tried this one out. And it should be good enough for video, so let's fast forward a few days and you guys will see what does it look like on the new camera.